basically this is work that's gone on for 30 years. When I started 30 years ago, actually it was 32 years ago, in electronic publishing, my goal was really simple. I wanted to be the Random House of tomorrow. 30 years later, you'll see later on in the talk, it's become more complex because I realized it's not sufficient actually just to be the publisher of tomorrow. I spent the first 15 years playing around with multimedia, expanding the notion of the page to include audio and video. We started doing films with commentary tracks back in the early 80s, put out first CD-ROMs in the late 80s, first e-books in 92. And then I left publishing to work on tools because I felt that without a completely different tool base, we weren't going to have an interesting electronic publishing culture. And that work's been going on now for about 17 or 18 years, and we're almost there, not quite. And then about 9 years ago, philanthropy in the United States came and gave me a huge amount of money so that I could go back into publishing when I told them I had absolutely no idea what it meant to be a publisher today. And I hired a bunch of really smart kids, and we sat around a table together for a year, and we started doing experiments. And in 2006, we put out what I think is probably the first networked book, where we put a text up online and allowed people to be in the margin together and start talking. And out of that has come a new company called Social Book, and it's been in closed beta for about a year and a half now, and the results are fairly stunning. I want to start by just showing you some of Social Book. Social Book is a system for social reading, and on the first level, you can read with people you know. Okay, so this is a class at a university in New York, and this is the first thing they read in Social Book. And there's a highlight here, and if I click on it, I get one student's comment. It was typical in the first book that they read. These are students who grew up for all these years. They had just, they got, everything they ever did was by themselves. They read by themselves. They got graded on their individual effort, et cetera. So they all wrote mini essays here. And then by the second book, this is a survey course in English literature, by the way. In the second book, you start to see these much more complex conversations starting to emerge in the margin. The teacher told me something very interesting. She said that the students were finding this so useful, they actually were starting to use Social Book outside of class in other courses where they were putting their own content in. Here's another. So when you read with people you know, like this, there's a very high signal-to-noise ratio. You really pay attention to each other. It's interesting to engage in the discussion. But it's quite possible that there's wisdom out there in the crowd, but we didn't want to sort of muck up the great conversation I was having people I knew with things that might be nonsense that are being said on the outside world. So we developed this idea of a community tab. So this is a high school class in Spanish, and they're reading this play, and these are the comments of the people in this class. There are two sections of the class. If I switch to the community tab, I'm suddenly looking at the comments not of the people in my class, but in the other class. And I can browse these comments, and if let me turn off the translation. If I see one that's interesting to me, I can open it up, and Colette is the person in the other class. Abby and Molly are, Colette is in the first class, and Abby and Molly are in the second class, but they're actually able to engage with Colette right here. Imagine if that books and documents over the next many, many decades will, especially if they're popular, will gather tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in some cases even millions of comments. There's going to be what's going to be necessary are very sophisticated mechanisms for rating, ranking, and sorting these kinds of comments. I just want to see the highest rated, the lowest rated. I just want to see the ones from my particular university. I just want to see the ones from my block. It's going to, it'll be something that will have to evolve over time, because right now we don't know yet how to do this in all the ways it needs to be done. This was an experiment in Germany. It's a best-selling literary novel from Zurkamp. It's a class outside of Berlin and the university. They put in 1,800 comments while they were reading the book. The author came to a symposium at the university a few weeks ago in Hildesheim, and he had sort of, his avatar was there. He sort of was a voyeur as the students read. And one of the things that the professor said in the symposium was that from now on he can never imagine writing without the knowledge that his readers are going to be in there, and that he doesn't know how that will change his writing, but he's quite confident it is, and I agree with him. In fact, I think that within 10 years, some brilliant young writer is going to write a book, not just with the knowledge that the readers are going to be there, but with the knowledge that the reader's participation is going to be key to the development of the narrative. We have feature films working in here. This is Carlos Saura's Boda de Sangre, and these are, actually it's a high school class again. They're having exactly the same conversation they would have in a book of text. The movie's actually all here. And I can insert my cursor at any point and write a comment. This is something from the Criterion Collection in the United States. They're going to be putting about a dozen films into Social Book for sale this fall. In the United States, every 8th grader reads Julius Caesar. I'd always wondered how come it is that every 8th grader doesn't study Citizen Kane, and every 11th grader study The Seventh Seal. And it occurred to me after a while was that the reason was that we don't give films to students in a form that would enable a close reading. But now we have that. In other words, we now have a mechanism for somebody to watch a film, to freeze it, to put in a comment, to enter a conversation, etc. And so we believe we're opening up an entirely new market for films, which will be as in education in the same way that novels are studied now, but also amongst people who really care about films, that the body of important films will gather huge amounts of commentary in the margin over the decades to come. This is a class in a university in the States where they're using it for creative writing. Each chapter in this book is another essay by one of the students, and they are critiquing each other's work in the book. This is outside of education per se. This is a company in Japan where they asked everybody in the company to write down 10 ideas for projects, and each chapter of the book is another 10 ideas, and then they all discussed it in here. And it was hugely successful. It was went on for about 2 weeks. It was a very intense discussion and resulted in a lot of what they report, a lot of really good ideas. I want to show you very quickly how easy it is to put things into SocialBook. Here's an article from Scientific American. If I click, no, don't translate. If I click upload to SocialBook, what just happened was it went and scraped that page on the fly. I'm giving this group a name, and I would put some email addresses here. I'd write a little note of invitation to a group of friends who I think might be interested. I click Create Group. They get an invitation, and this article is now here, ready to be, no, don't translate, ready to comment. You can also, uploading EPUBs is trivial. You can also cut and paste. We've made it as easy as we can to get things into SocialBook. So I'm finding SocialBook very exciting. It looks to me like this idea of social reading has currency. And because we noticed in the places where it's been tried most seriously, it's gone viral. In this high school in New York where we've done a lot of work, it's spread from the Spanish department where it started to other departments. At NYU, where we did this big experiment recently, with one English professor, we're now finding that there are dozens and dozens of projects being developed just in this one department. And just in-house, it's interesting, we stopped using email about a year ago. We put all of our substantive conversations into SocialBook and use it exclusively. But I had a problem. I started going out to raise money to get this further developed, bring it to market. And a couple of things happened. One was that I realized that as fantastic as SocialBook is, the uptake is actually fairly slow. Once people use it, they get it and they really like it, but it's very, very difficult to get people to actually start using it. And that, I'm used to this, by the way. We put Jurassic Park for sale, and Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide for Galaxy for sale in 1992, and it isn't until 2007 with the Kindle that ebooks really start to take off. So I'm used to the idea of being ahead of the curve. But I realized that with social reading, while I'm confident that it's going to happen, it's not, the trajectory of it is not going to be fast enough to really be interesting to the investment community. But the other thing I realized, going back to wanting to be the Random House of tomorrow, when we started doing films with commentary tracks and CD-ROMs and ebooks, we were basically stuck with the infrastructure of the print world. And that wasn't going to work well enough. It didn't work well enough for us. And I realized with social reading that the infrastructure that exists out there of Amazon and Apple is also not going to work for social reading for lots of reasons. And so that just being sort of an advanced publisher was not going to be sufficient. We were actually going to have to build the infrastructure. So I'm just going to, in the last few minutes that I have, I want to show you, I want to make a little presentation. Will you tell me when I have 3 minutes left? Or you'll tell, okay. So, romantic and ambitious vision. To build a publishing platform that I think is truly post-print. 3 chinks in Amazon's armor. Purchase content is tied to their hardware and software. It's like the Roach Motel. You can get in, but you can't get out. Publishers are treated like third-class citizens. Amazon hides your brand, prevents you from having direct contact with users, refuses to share any data. Amazon fails to capitalize on the power of the network. The ever weaker associate program does a terrible job of motivating people to be third-party sales agents. I want to commend the woman from Velobox. I mean, she totally nailed the 25% commission being something that actually motivates people to go out and sell things. Amazon knows how to compete, but not how to collaborate. And everything I just said about Amazon goes for Apple. Amazon and Apple ecosystems are based on the zero-sum realities of the object-based print world. If you have it, I don't have it. If I have it, you don't have it. Competition exists at every point in the value chain. It's why Amazon and Apple are suing everybody or being sued by each other every day. And this may have been, I think that for them to have built ecosystems based on the paradigms of print were probably necessary for when they were trying to get people to switch from paper to screens. But over time, an ecosystem based on the DNA of print is going to turn from a strength to an Achilles heel, to a fundamental weakness. And we're proposing to build the first truly post-print media platform based on the following principles. Open will beat closed. Just as Microsoft beat Apple in the early 80s because anybody could make a Microsoft device, just as Android is slowly but surely overtaking Apple, probably in the form of Samsung, open in the end beats closed. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens over time. Collaboration beat competition. Publishers have to have direct contact with their customers. Brands are crucial. This is something that was not so, publishing brands have meant less and less in the last 20 years per se, but we need to bring back brands. They're crucial. In a world of infinite stuff, discovery is key. Publishers, editors, bespoke retailing are becoming more, not less important. Consumers are increasingly demanding respect, which includes no DRM and no being tied into hardware silos. These rebellions haven't sort of gone viral yet, but they're going in the next, they will go, they'll get bigger and bigger over time, especially when new platforms emerge which enable and insist on no DRM and no hardware silos. And finally, the old categories, books, music, video, and games are increasingly irrelevant. We're going to see new forms emerge, and we need a platform that acknowledges them. So welcome to the media ecosystem that will power it all. And I'm just going to show you, so what I did one day was I realized that I don't care how much money you gave me, to build something that over time would actually compete with Amazon probably wasn't possible. That the problem is too difficult to start from scratch. So I was very lucky last year at the BEA, an old friend of mine from the CD-ROM publishing world, Ralph Mullers, who'd done been very successful in Germany, had started a new company, and he brought with him Jens Klingelhofer, who's here in the room, from a company called Bookwire. They were in New York, and I suddenly realized, wow, these guys have actually done a key part of what needs to be done in terms of building a platform. And I started to get this idea that instead of starting from scratch, I would try to identify companies around the world that had basically taken a bit of the problem and done a really good job at it. And that by investing in those companies, that each had their own trajectory and their own place in the world, that if we did it strategically, we could help them grow and provide the services that they're serving, but we could also, over time, build a platform. And do I have 2 more minutes? Okay, 1, all right. So these are 3 exquisitely complementary services. I got to go back to the web. Hold on. Got to do this in 30 seconds. Where's the web? We lost the web. Here we are. Okay. So Bookwire, Book to Look, widgets on steroids for discovery. I'll show you my 2 favorite things. First of all, I can share this widget, which has the sample of the book, or can have the whole book in it. I can share it to social networks, etc. I can embed the whole widget on a web page. I can also, as the publisher, I can specify which retailers are going, where I can buy this book. So if I have an allegiance to Powell's, I can buy it from Powell's. I can buy it from the publisher directly. Bookwire is Jens and his team have done just the most beautiful job of a portal for publishers for getting their books into the digital domain. And lastly, and I don't have time to really explain this one, but this is a piece of genius. Forget the way this looks, forget its name. This is a retail aggregator, and what they've done is, if I buy this is the publisher's page. They allow publishers to brand their pages as they like. If I buy this book from this page, the publisher gets 95% of the sale, and the aggregator is taking only 5%. Just like in Velobox, anybody can come and curate a store out of the aggregated catalog. If I buy this book from House of Stevens page, the publisher gets $7 of a $10 book. The House of Stevens gets $2.50, and the aggregator gets the same 5%. I think it's not obvious, but these three things fit together beautifully. If House of Stevens has book-to-look widgets that are made automatically when OR books entered their metadata into Bookwire, then there's a sales tool for the reseller, and it's a way for the United States for bookstores to really get involved in the ebook business, which they're not now, but they're going to be able to do it by creating their own stores on WeKiosk. There's so much more, but talk later. Thank you very much.